in your quiet room alone at night when you have your ear pressed against your pillow. You can hear your heartbeat. As a kid, the muffled, rhythmic beats sounded like gentle footsteps on my carpeted floor. And so as a kid, almost every night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I would hear these footsteps and I would be ripped back to consciousness, terrified. For my entire childhood, I lived alone with my mother in not so good neighborhoods. They were always transitional, places. People with lower incomes, a lower means, usually where you gradually you move in and you move back out. And my mother and I were two of these people. We lived in the kind of house you see being transported in two pieces on the interstate. But my mom took like really good care of it. There were a lot of woods surrounding the neighborhood that I would play in and explore during the day. But at night, as often most kids do, they took a more sinister feeling. This coupled with the fact that due to the nature of our house, there was a fairly large crawl space underneath that always filled my mind with imaginary monsters and inescapable scenarios. They always would consume my thoughts when I always heard those footsteps. My heartbeat. I told my mom about the footsteps and she said that I was just imagining things. I persisted enough that she blasted my ears with water from a turkey baster once just to, I don't know, help. She thought it would help, but of course it didn't. Despite all the creepiness, the footsteps weren't the only weird thing that would happen. Every now and then, despite going to sleep on the top bunk, I would wake up on the bottom. Most of the nights I would get up to go piss or something or drink water, and I would remember going to sleep on the bottom bunk. But this only happened once or twice. But waking up on the bottom bunk wasn't too terrifying. It was one night I didn't wake up on my bottom bunk at all. I had heard the footsteps, but I was far too gone to be woken up by them. And when I was awoken, it wasn't by the sound of footsteps or a nightmare or anything like that. It was because I was really cold. Like really cold. When I opened my eyes, I didn't see the bottom of my top bunk. I wasn't in my room at all. I saw the stars. I was outside. I sat up immediately and I tried to figure out what was going on. I thought I was dreaming, but that didn't seem right. Though neither did being in the woods. There was a deflated pool float right in front of me, one of those shaped like a shark. This was only added to the surreal feeling, but after a while it seemed like I just wasn't going to wake up because I wasn't asleep. This wasn't a dream. I stood up to focus myself, but I didn't recognize these woods. I played in the woods all the time by my house, so I knew them really well, but these weren't the same woods. How could I get out? I took a step and felt a shooting pain in my foot, which knocked me back to my bottom. I had stepped on a thorn. By the light of the moon, I could see that there were everywhere. I looked at my other foot, but it was fine, and as a matter of fact, so was the rest of me. I didn't have a scratch on me. I wasn't even dirty. Mind you, I was a kid, so before I figured anything out, I just sat there and cried for a while. I didn't know which way to go, so I picked up and just walked any direction. I resisted the urge to call out since I wasn't sure I actually wanted to be found by whoever or whatever might be out there. I walked for what seemed to be hours. I tried to walk in a straight line and tried to course correct when I had to take detours, but I was a kid and I was afraid. There weren't any howls, there wasn't any screams, or there was actually once I did hear a noise that scared me. It sounded like a crying baby. I think now it was probably just a cat, but I panicked. I ran in so many different directions to avoid thick bushes and collapsed trees. And I was trying to pay like as much attention to where I stepped because I was barefoot and I had stepped on a bunch of thorns already and my feet were in pretty bad shape. I paid too much attention to where I was stepping, not enough to where I was actually going. Not long after hearing that baby cry, I saw something that filled me with a kind of despair. Despair I haven't experienced in a while. I saw the pool float again. I was running around for what seemed to be hours, and I ended up only 10 feet from where I had woken up. This wasn't magic or some supernatural space bending. I was lost. Up until that moment, I thought more about getting out of the woods than how I actually got in here. But being back at the beginning caused my mind to swim. I wasn't even sure that these were my woods. I had only been hoping that they were mine. I had run in a huge circle around the spot, or did I get turned around from the start? I honestly didn't know how I was getting out of here. At the time, I thought the North Star was just the brightest star, so I looked and found the brightest star, and I followed it. Eventually, things actually started to make sense, and when I saw the ditch, a dirt ditch where me and my friends would go to play Dirt Cloud Wars, and I knew this was actually my woods because I recognized this ditch. I finally made it out. By that point, I had been walking really slowly because my feet were hurting so much. But I was happy to be so close to home that I broke into a light jog. When I actually saw the roof of my house over the neighboring lower set houses, I let out a light sob. I ran so fast. I just wanted to be home. I had already decided that I wouldn't say anything. I had no idea what I possibly could say. I would get back to the house somehow, clean up, and get in bed. My heart sunk as I rounded the corner and my house came in fully into view. Every light in my house was on. I knew my mom was up, and I knew I had to explain, or try to explain, where I was, and I couldn't even figure out where to start. My run became a jog, which became a walk. I saw her silhouette behind the blinds, and although I was worried about how to explain things to her, that just didn't matter anymore to me at this point. I walked up the steps to the porch and put my hand on the doorknob and turned it. Right before I could push, 2 arms wrapped around me. I screamed as loud as I could, "Mom! Help me, please, Mom!" The feeling of being so close to being safe and then physically being pulled away from it filled me with so much dread. Even after all these years, it's indescribable. The door I had been torn away from opened, and a flash of hope shot through my heart. But it wasn't my mom. It was a man. And he was enormous. I thrashed and I kicked at the shins of the person holding me while also trying to get away from the person who was trying to come out of my house. I was so scared, but I was so furious. "Let me go! Where is she? Where's my mom? What'd you do with her?" As my throat stung from screaming, I was drawing in breath. I had become aware of a sound that had been present for longer than I had perceived it. "Honey, please calm down. I've got you." It sounded like my mom. The arms loosened and set me down. As the man approached me, blocking the porch light with his head, I noticed his clothes. He was a cop. I turned to face the voice behind me and saw that it really was my mom. And everything was actually okay. I began to cry, and the 3 of us went inside. "I'm so glad you're home, sweetie. I was so worried. I thought I'd never see you again." By that point, she was crying too. "I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I just wanted to come home. I'm so sorry." "It's okay. Just don't ever do it to me again. I'm not sure me or my shins can take it." A little laughter broke through my sobs, and I smiled a bit. "Well, I'm sorry for kicking you, but why'd you grab me like that?" "I was just afraid you would run away again." I was confused. "What do you mean?" "We found your note on your pillow," she said, and pointed to a piece of paper that the police officer slid across the table. I picked it up, and the note read, "Running away. Letter." It said that I was unhappy and I never wanted to see her or any of my friends again. The police officer exchanged a few words with my mom on the porch while I stared at the letter. I didn't remember writing this. I didn't remember anything about this. But even if I somehow went to the bathroom and didn't remember, or even I have gone into the woods on my own, even if all that had been true, the only thing I knew at this point is this isn't how you spell my name. I didn't write this letter.